So, chapter 2 is about planning a healthy diet. Presumably, when you decided to take this course, you were hoping, or it's also my hope, that you'll be able to plan a healthy diet for yourself. And this is what that chapter is going to be about. All right, so what are some principles and guidelines for planning a healthy diet? We have adequacy, balance, energy control, nutrient density, moderation, and variety. So let's start with adequacy. Adequacy means that your diet provides enough energy and enough of all the nutrients to adequately meet the needs of normal, healthy people. So, for example, with iron, the body does lose some iron every day, so people have to replace it by eating adequate foods that contain iron. The second is balance, and balance helps us to ensure adequacy. So we want to balance our diet in the sense that we consume enough, but not too much of different types of foods and in proportion to each other, so that foods rich in some nutrients don't crowd out foods that are rich in other nutrients. So, for example, meat has a lot of iron, but is poor in calcium, and milk has a lot of calcium, but doesn't have very much iron. So we want to have a diet that consists of meat, milk, and many other nutrients so we have balance. Of course, you don't have to get your iron from meat or from milk, but the point being that we want to have foods in proportion to each other and in proportion to the body's needs. Another diet planning principle is energy control. So we want to have a diet which is balanced and is adequate in all the nutrients, but fits within a reasonable calorie amount. And this requires some careful planning because especially with fast food and processed foods, there's a lot of empty calorie foods out there that contribute quite a bit of energy, but might lack protein and vitamins and minerals. So calorie control is key for selecting foods that are highly nutrient dense. So let's talk about nutrient density. So nutrient density will promote some of the other principles like adequacy and calorie control. So to eat all the nutrients you need in adequate amounts, you'll have to select nutrient-dense foods if you don't want to be overeating. So that's foods that will deliver the most nutrients for the least amount of energy. So, it'd be better off for you to have a slice of whole wheat bread than a little bit of soda. Even though they both contribute carbohydrate, the whole wheat bread is going to give you some B vitamins and some fiber in addition to the carbohydrate. The next principle is moderation, and moderation contributes to adequacy, balance, and calorie control. So, you're going to want to eat foods that are very rich in sugar and fat moderately and only occasionally. Of course, fat is essential and some fat is very good, but everything in moderation. And the last one is variety. So variety will help you improve your nutrient adequacy because different foods are rich in different types of nutrients. So, if you're eating a lot of different colors of fruits and vegetables, you're going to be getting different vitamins and minerals and different antioxidants. So the principles that we're looking for are adequacy, balance, calorie control, nutrient density, moderation, and variety. So here on this slide, we can see the nutrient density of two breakfast options compared. This is in your textbook on page 40. So this is a very nutrient dense breakfast, and this is a nutrient poor breakfast. They both have the same amount of calories, probably about 500 calories, I think your book says. But this breakfast is going to have a lot more nutrients. There'll be some fiber, vitamin, minerals in the fruit, some protein, again, more fiber and vitamins and minerals in the cereal and more protein, whereas the nutrient poor breakfast, doesn't have very much iron. It's very low in calcium, very low in vitamin C, fiber, and protein, but does have the same amount of calories. So here are the estimated energy needs for sedentary adults. And again, sedentary basically means not very active. So if you're a very active person, this won't apply to you. But in general, for women of 19 to 30 years old, 2,000 calories is about what we're aiming for. And for men 19 to 30 years old, about 2,400 calories for a sedentary adult. Now, the dietary guidelines for Americans are based on evidence. We talked in lecture one about how nutrition research is done. So this is evidence-based advice in order to help people maintain their healthy weight and reduce their risk of the chronic diseases like diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and from having a stroke, and just to promote their overall health and wellness. Now, the dietary guidelines for Americans are reviewed and revised every 5 years. And there's major topic areas that they focus on. In the most recent dietary guidelines, these were the major topic areas. Balancing calories to manage weight. So they want us to control our calorie intake to maintain a healthy body weight, and do this also by increasing our physical activity and reducing time spent in sedentary behaviors. Another are some foods and food components to reduce. They want to reduce our daily sodium intake to less than 2,300 milligrams. That's about a teaspoon of salt a day, so most Americans are well over that. And then to consume less than 10% of our calories from saturated fat. There's a long list of other foods and foods components that are recommended that Americans reduce in the dietary guidelines. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it's on page 41 in your textbook. They also want us to increase some food and some nutrients, increase our fruit and vegetable intake, and again, eat a variety of fruits and vegetables, increase lean proteins, etc. And then to build healthy eating patterns, not follow a specific diet that isn't sustainable, but to select an eating pattern that can meet our nutrient needs over time, and of course, incorporate food safety. So there are a few different diet planning guides out there to help people plan a healthy diet for themselves and for their family. One of these is the USDA food patterns, and this breaks down food into groups and subgroups so that people can achieve some balance and variety and adequacy in their diet. So we'll go through these in your book. They're on page 44. The first group is the fruit group. The USDA recommends consuming a variety of fruits and choosing whole or cut up fruits more often than fruit juice. This is because whole fruits are going to be richer in fiber, and that will help slow the absorption of the sugar that's in the fruit into the body. And then we're going to want to limit fruits that contain solid fats and are added sugars, like canned fruit that's canned in syrup, juices, punches, etc. So fruits also contribute, of course, fiber, but also folate, vitamin A, vitamin C, and potassium. And according to the USDA, a serving is 1 cup of fruit that's fresh or frozen or canned, or a half a cup of dried fruit, and 1 cup of 100% fruit juice. The next one is vegetables. The USDA recommends consuming, again, a wide variety of vegetables each day and choosing from all 5 of these subgroups at least several times a week. So there's dark green vegetables, red and orange, legumes. These are beans, garbanzo beans, lentils, soybeans, tofu, etc. The starchy vegetables like potatoes, corn, green peas, cassava, hominy, and lima beans. And then other vegetables like artichokes, asparagus, beets, eggplants, cucumbers, all of these. And then we're going to want to limit those that have solid fat or added sugar. So baked beans have a lot of added sugar, coleslaw, some added fat, French fries, again, the same. So these don't these have other disadvantages that sort of offset the benefits of the fresh vegetables. So again, along with fiber, vegetables are going to contribute folate, vitamin E, vitamin C, vitamin K, vitamin E, magnesium, and potassium. And we're going to learn more about these vitamins and minerals later on in the course. And 1 cup of vegetables is going to be a serving if it's raw or cooked. Again, a cup of legumes is a serving, or 1 cup of vegetable juice. And if it's raw vegetables or leafy greens, 2 cups is going to equal a serving. So the other food groups in the USDA food pattern are grains. The USDA recommends making at least half of your grain selections whole grains. So whole grains are amaranth, barley, brown rice, buckwheat, pasta, and popcorn are even a whole grain. And we're going to want to limit these grains that contain, again, solid fats or added sugars. So limiting any food group that contains additional solid fat and added sugar is going to be sort of a common theme throughout the USDA food pattern. So, cornbread, cakes, cookies aren't going to give you as many health benefits as the whole grains. And then again, 1 ounce of grains or 1 slice of bread, half a cup of cooked rice, pasta, or cereal. This is what constitutes a serving. Now for protein foods. They want us to choose a wide variety of protein foods from the 3 subgroups, including seafood, in place of meat or poultry at least once a week. So we have seafood, meat, poultry, and eggs, and then nuts, seeds, and soy products. And then again, limiting these processed, refined protein foods that have added sugars and solid fats. So bacon, baked beans, fried meats, hot dogs, poultry with the skin, sausages, etc. And here again, 1 ounce is going to be a serving. Then we have our milk and milk products group. They hope that we'll make fat-free or low-fat choices, and if you don't consume milk, to have other calcium-rich foods to be adequate in calcium. A cup of milk or milk product is going to be a serving. And then we also have oils. Oils, it says, are not a food group, but are featured here because they contribute vitamin E and essential fatty acids. So the USDA wants us to eat oils instead of the solid fats when possible. And when we learn about fats in the lipids chapter, we'll learn a little bit more about why. And then again, a teaspoon of oil is 1 serving. So balancing the USDA food patterns is one way that people can plan a healthy diet for themselves. And in your book on page 46, it gives the recommended weekly amounts from each subgroup depending on your calorie needs. Now, there's something else called discretionary calories in a diet, and these are essentially the calories that you can consume in your energy allowance after consuming enough nutrient-dense foods to meet all your nutrient needs for the day. So let's say if you wanted to maintain a healthy weight, your energy needs were around 2,000 calories. So that would be if you were a woman from the age of 19 to 30, you would get 2,000 calories in your budget, if you will. So if this was your energy allowance to maintain a healthy weight, and you consume 1,742 calories of nutrient-dense foods, you met all your nutrient needs at this point, then you'd still have 258 discretionary calories to work with throughout the day. As you can sort of think of it as like a budget. You make a certain amount of money in your paycheck every month, and you need to pay rent, buy food, pay your bills, but then usually, hopefully, you might have a little money extra left over to play around with, to do something fun. Now, an important point I want to make clear in this course is you should never have to give up your ethnic food choices or cultural food practices to have a healthy diet. All different types of cultural food practices can fit in a healthy diet. And this table is a really good example of a few different ethnic food choices. Kind of lumps all the Asian foods into one right here, but Asian, Mediterranean, Mexican foods, and how they break down into the different USDA food groups. So another diet planning guide is My Plate. You might have heard of My Plate. It replaced the pyramid that was way long ago back in the day. So you can find My Plate on www.choosemyplate.gov, and this is an educational tool. So it combines the USDA food patterns that we just talked about with the dietary guidelines for Americans. And this is what the image looks like right here. I'll blow it up in a second. But this allows people to make personal plans based on what this plate looks like. All right, so here's my plate. It divides a plate in half, and it wants us to have half our plate be fruits and vegetables, and then another portion right here to be grains, and then protein right here, and then dairy. My plate does have some shortcomings, one of which people say and criticize My Plate for is it doesn't provide enough key information in this image about which kinds of fruits, vegetables, protein, or grains to choose. For example, you could have something that looked like some French fries, some canned peaches and syrup, maybe some cornbread and a hot dog and a milkshake, and it would still fit in My Plate in terms of the food groups, but it might not be the healthiest or most nutrient adequate balanced meal for you to have. So one difference between My Plate and the former pyramid is that the meat and beans group is now just called the protein group. So this protein section doesn't have to necessarily come from meat. It could come from beans and legumes, which were a really great source of protein. They contain a lot of fiber, some vitamins and minerals, and they're usually very affordable for most people. And again, the former milk group is now the dairy group. So we can compare and contrast My Plate to this is the Harvard Healthy Eating Plate. This one's a little bit different. Instead of dairy right here, it actually has a glass of water. It wants us to drink water, tea, or coffee with little or no added sugar as our primary beverage, and limit milk and dairy and juice to just a few servings every day, and of course to avoid sugary drinks. So you can see that these notes on the side are a lot more specific, but this plate doesn't look as easy to follow or as visually simple as the other plate. It requires a lot more reading. So then this also has the addition of healthy oils. The other plate doesn't have anything about fats. So this makes sure that you get the healthy kind of fats like olive and canola oil, and wants you to limit saturated and trans fats. And then here we have the vegetables group, and it says that the more veggies, the better, and that potatoes and French fries don't count in the vegetable group. So here's a table that shows some diet planning using a 2,000 calorie USDA food pattern. So if you happen to be one of those adult women between the ages of 19 and 30, this might be a good plan for you to follow if you wanted to use the USDA food patterns to guide your eating. So here we have the fruits, 2 cups, vegetables, 2.5 cups, etc. And it breaks it down. For breakfast, you might have half a cup of fruit, an ounce of grains, a cup of milk. So that might be some cereal with banana, and then so on and so forth. And this can be a really easy way to sort of get started learning to balance foods throughout the day and make sure you're getting adequate nutrient intake with some variety and also, of course, moderation. So the dietary recommendations suggest that we make half our grains whole. So what does it mean to be a whole grain? So to understand this, let's take a look at the wheat plant. This is the zoomed in picture of one of the kernels of a wheat plant. So around the outside is a protective coating of bran around the kernel, and this bran is very rich in nutrients and fiber. The endosperm contains starch and proteins. And then the germ is the seed that grows into the wheat plant. So this also is essentially rich in vitamins and minerals because this has to support the new life of the plant. And then the outer husk is essentially an inedible part. So when we have refined flour, this is very finely ground endosperm. So they'll usually enrich this with nutrients and bleach it. So this is essentially white flour. And when I say enriched, I mean they're adding back specific nutrients to replace the losses that occurred. So when we have refined flour, we're just getting this endosperm portion with starch and proteins, and some vitamins, specifically B vitamins, are usually added back. And then wheat flour is any type of flour, not necessarily finely ground, made from the endosperm of the wheat kernel. But then whole wheat flour is made from the entire kernel. So you're getting all the nutrients that were in the bran and in the germ are going to still be present in the wheat flour. So this is why diets that are higher in whole grains are usually better for us. So let's take a look at the nutrients in bread. So in whole grain bread, we're going to have the orange bar here, and look how many more nutrients are in whole wheat bread, not just of iron, niacin, thiamine, riboflavin, and folate, but also in magnesium, zinc, quite a bit more. And then look at how much more fiber is in the whole wheat bread. The purple now is enriched bread, so some of the vitamins, especially these B vitamins, are added back, and they might even exceed that of the whole grain bread. And then the unenriched bread, just plain old white bread, is barely giving us any fiber, zinc, magnesium, or these B vitamins in comparison to the others.